What if the most valuable land is not on land anymore? Take a look around. Zoning laws are gridlocked, prices are insane, and coastal real estate is already spoken for. We've hit the ceiling on buildable land. But right offshore, just past the seawall, there's so much space, trillions of dollars worth of space. So look, we've got the tech, we've got the urgency, and now we've got the momentum. A new economy is emerging on the water, and it's not just boats or cruise ships. We're talking about floating homes, floating logistics, floating schools. It's not a gimmick. This is a workaround. And the floating economy is poised to become one of the most important shifts in infrastructure and investment over the next 50 years. Let's break it down. This isn't about futuristic domes bobbing around like science fiction. It's not about cruise ships with Wi-Fi. This is about how and where we build critical systems. Homes, schools, warehouses, ports, energy hubs, but all directly on the water. It's happening in response to real problems, such as land scarcity, urban congestion, rising sea levels, infrastructure costs, and political bottlenecks. We're going to look at what the floating economy actually is, how it's already showing up, and what it means for business, investment, and the future of cities. So let's define this clearly. Let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. So the floating economy refers to commercial activity that takes place on the water through platforms, structures, and services that don't rely on land. That includes things like floating homes, floating schools, floating logistics hubs, floating power stations, floating ports, floating retail, tourism, and so much more. This is not the same as the blue economy, which focuses on ocean conservation, fisheries, and sustainability. It's also not just offshore or maritime in the traditional sense. This is about permanent infrastructure, which is built to serve cities, economies, and communities, all designed to float. Floating solves land-based friction. If you can't build in a flood zone, float it. If it's too expensive to buy land, skip it. Zoning laws blocking your innovation, then just move it offshore. It's real estate, logistics, services, and governance without being tethered to dry land. This is a real shift. So let's ground this in some examples. Because it's not really a future dream, it's a present reality. It's already happening. In the Netherlands, they're building entire floating neighborhoods. They're self-powered, storm-resilient homes that rise with the tide. In the Maldives, they're building floating luxury hotels that offer full-service hospitality on modular pods. These are functioning resorts, and they're already getting booked out. In South Korea, Busan is in the process of piloting floating infrastructure zones that are designed to attract tech companies, expand urban space, and reduce real estate pressure. In Nigeria, in Makako, a sprawling floating economy in Lagos already houses tens of thousands of people, built entirely outside the formal land system. In the Philippines, floating classrooms are being tested to reach rural islands where land infrastructure doesn't even exist. In Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they're studying floating logistics platforms to bypass congested ports and streamline high-volume shipping. Just take a look at Oxagon. In the US, cities like Miami, Tampa, and San Diego are quietly investing in research around floating infrastructure to prepare for rising sea levels. Now, each of these examples solves a different problem, but they all lead to the same opportunity: value creation on the water. This is not just a design trend. This is international movement fueled by pressure, capital, and tech. Now, here's where things get really exciting, though. This shift is not being led by governance. It's being built by entrepreneurs, investors, engineers, real estate developers. Startups are already raising rounds to launch. Floating solar farms, water-based housing developments, pop-up floating stages and event platforms, modular warehouses that can be repositioned globally. Venture capitalists, VCs, they're funding maritime software tools from vessel tracking to offshore permitting. They know infrastructure is shifting and they want the picks and shovels. Port authorities are also getting creative. They're pushing for floating SEZs or special economic zones just offshore. The big question is why? Because they give more flexibility with regulation, taxes, and development speed. Real estate investors are classifying floating platforms as mobile assets, which often sidesteps land-based taxes and approval processes. And then there's a workforce. This economy is actually creating jobs. Welders, marine technicians, floating structure installers, crew operators, offshore securities, port managers, the list goes on forever. This is not just some abstract future play. This is a job engine. It's a startup incubator. It's a geopolitical advantage. And the smartest players are saying, if we can't build it on land, let's float it. If it already floats, let's scale it. So where does that leave us today? The floating economy is not a niche. It's not a luxury, and it's definitely not a fad. This is a response to gridlock, political, geographical, and economic. And it's being driven by people who see past those limits. We're not just adapting to rising water, we're reorganizing around it. Floating is not about escaping land. It's about unlocking growth where land systems have stalled. It's about economic zones that don't depend on dry ground. It's about trade without border blocks, infrastructure without red tape, and housing that can move. The floating economy is not science fiction. It's already happening. And if you understand it now, before everyone else, you're going to be a part of shaping what comes next. If this opened your eyes to something new, click to subscribe. We cover the floating economy every week across infrastructure, policy, investment, and the real world moves that you won't hear about anywhere else. So stick around. The future is floating.